Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, 1859 to 1930, was a British writer, physician, and creator of some of the most enduring characters in English literature, notably Sherlock Holmes, the world's most famous fictional detective. His life was multifaceted, spanning medicine, literature, spirituality, and even public advocacy. Conan Doyle was born on May 22, 1859, in Edinburgh, Scotland. His family was of Irish descent, and his father, Charles Doyle, was an artist, though he struggled with alcoholism. Arthur was sent to boarding school in England, where he developed a love for literature, often reading works by Edgar Allan Poe, a significant influence on his later work. Doyle studied medicine at the University of Edinburgh, where he encountered many of the influences that would shape his literary career. His professor, Dr. Joseph Bell, was a master of observation and deduction, who later served as the inspiration for Sherlock Holmes. Doyle graduated in 1881, and although he practiced medicine for several years, his literary aspirations soon overtook his medical career. Doyle began writing short stories while still in medical school. His first notable work, A Study in Scarlet, 1887, introduced Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. The characters became an instant hit, and their adventures were serialized in the Strand magazine, quickly cementing Conan Doyle's reputation as a literary figure. In 1885, Conan Doyle married Louisa Hawkins, with whom he had 2 children. After her death from tuberculosis, he married Jean Leckie in 1907. He was deeply affected by the loss of several family members, including his son, during World War I, leading him to become an outspoken advocate for spiritualism later in life, believing in communication with the dead. Conan Doyle was knighted in 1902, partly in recognition of his writings in defense of British policies during the Boer War, particularly his pamphlet The War in South Africa, Its Cause and Conduct. Doyle wrote 4 novels and 56 short stories featuring Sherlock Holmes. These works are considered landmarks in detective fiction. A Study in Scarlet, 1887, the first novel introducing Holmes and Watson. The Sign of the Four, 1890, another full-length novel involving mystery and treasure. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, 1892, a collection of short stories that includes famous tales like A Scandal in Bohemia, The Hound of the Baskervilles, 1902, perhaps the most famous of all Holmes stories, set on the fog-shrouded moors. The Valley of Fear, 1914, the final Holmes novel. Conan Doyle famously attempted to kill off Holmes in The Final Problem, 1893, where the detective faces his arch-nemesis, Professor Moriarty. Public outcry led Doyle to bring him back in The Hound of the Baskervilles and later stories. Another well-known character created by Conan Doyle is Professor George Edward Challenger, a bold and eccentric scientist. This series includes The Lost World, 1912, a tale of an expedition to a plateau in South America where dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures still exist. The Poison Belt, 1913, a science fiction story about a mysterious ether enveloping the Earth. Conan Doyle was passionate about historical fiction, which he believed showcased his finest writing. Some of his notable historical novels include Micah Clarke, 1889, a novel set during the Monmouth Rebellion in 17th century England. The White Company, 1891, a romantic adventure set during the 100 Years' War. Sir Nigel, 1906, a prequel to The White Company. Doyle also wrote works of non-fiction, including The Crime of the Congo, 1909, which exposed atrocities in the Belgian Congo, and The Coming of the Fairies, 1922, a work defending the existence of fairies, based on the famous Cottingley Fairies hoax. Doyle's fascination with the paranormal grew later in life, especially after the deaths of his son, brother, and nephew in World War I. This belief in spiritualism shaped his final years and writings, leading him to author books on the subject and participate in debates about the supernatural. He passed away on July 7, 1930, at the age of 71. He died of a heart attack at his home in Crowborough, England, leaving behind a profound legacy in literature. Known for Sherlock Holmes and Professor Challenger, he also made significant contributions to historical novels, science fiction, and even spiritualism later in life. Movies adapted from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's works, especially Sherlock Holmes, have spanned multiple genres, styles, and decades. Here are a few notable adaptations. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, 1939. Starring Basil Rathbone as Holmes and Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson. This is one of the classic portrayals that shaped the early film image of Sherlock Holmes. The Hound of the Baskervilles, this story has seen many adaptations, including versions in 1939, 1959, and 2002. The 1959 adaptation by Hammer Films stars Peter Cushing as Holmes and is particularly famous for its gothic horror style. Sherlock Holmes, 2009, and Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, 2011, directed by Guy Ritchie and starring Robert Downey Jr. as Holmes and Jude Law as Watson. These movies reimagine Holmes as a more physical, gritty character, bringing action and a modern twist to the classic detective. Mr. Holmes, 2015. This film, based on Mitch Cullen's novel A Slight Trick of the Mind, stars Ian McKellen as an elderly Sherlock Holmes. While not directly adapted from Doyle's stories, it's inspired by the character's legacy and explores Holmes reflecting on his career and unsolved mysteries. Enola Holmes, 2020. Though adapted from Nancy Springer's Enola Holmes mystery series, which focuses on Sherlock Holmes' younger sister, it features Holmes as a key character, played by Henry Cavill. It captures Doyle's world through a fresh, family-oriented narrative. Without a Clue 1988 is a British comedy film directed by Tom Eberhardt and starring Michael Caine and Ben Kingsley. It is based on the Sherlock Holmes stories, but in this version, the roles are reversed. Dr. John Watson is the brilliant detective, while Sherlock Holmes is an actor hired to pose as the detective so that Watson can protect his reputation as a physician. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's works, especially the Sherlock Holmes stories, have inspired numerous television adaptations over the years. Here are a few of the most notable ones. Sherlock Holmes, 1954 to 1955. This was one of the first TV series based on Doyle's stories, starring Ronald Howard as Holmes and H. Marion Crawford as Watson. It aired in the US and brought the characters to a new, wider audience. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, 1979 to 1986. This Soviet adaptation, starring Vasily Livanov as Holmes and Vitaly Solomon as Watson, is particularly beloved in Russia and is considered one of the finest portrayals. Its unique cultural perspective gave the series a fresh and respectful look at Doyle's works. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, 1984 to 1994. This British series, starring Jeremy Brett as Sherlock Holmes and David Burke, later Edward Hardwicke, as Dr. Watson, is widely considered one of the most faithful adaptations. Brett's portrayal became iconic, capturing Holmes's eccentric personality and intellect, and adapting most of Doyle's stories with detailed period settings. Sherlock, 2010 to 2017. Created by Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, this BBC series starred Benedict Cumberbatch as Holmes and Martin Freeman as Watson. Set in modern-day London, it reimagined the classic cases with contemporary twists, while staying true to the essence of the characters and stories. It gained international popularity and has a large fan following for its unique blend of old and new. Elementary, 2012 to 2019. An American take on Sherlock Holmes, this CBS series reimagined Holmes, Johnny Lee Miller, as a modern-day detective in New York and gave him a female Dr. Watson, Lucy Liu. The series diverged from Doyle's original settings and plots but kept Holmes's investigative brilliance and deductive reasoning at its core. Conan Doyle's impact on popular culture is enormous. Sherlock Holmes remains a global icon, symbolizing logic, wit, and brilliant deduction. The enduring popularity of his work, adapted to suit different generations and media, is a testament to Doyle's remarkable storytelling ability. While he often felt overshadowed by the character of Holmes, wishing to be remembered for his historical novels, his legacy is firmly tied to his creation of the world's most famous detective.